I will say that Funimation has gone wild with merchandising, and I'm so glad to see an American company do it right. ADV tried with ADV Toys, and that never did well. Geneon really never could get their marketing on their merchandise right. Funimation seems to... Yeah, that too. Okay. Funimation has done surprisingly well, and I guess they learned with the mother of all retail gods, Dragon Ball Z, which, you know, lunchboxes and shirts and skateboards and tennis shoes. And Dragon Ball Z is still a cash cow for that company. It's amazing how long a lifespan that show has had. That and Fruits Basket both. Fruits Basket is still one of their #1 selling DVDs to this day, which is wild. But so we're starting to see more merchandise like this. The bootleg plush, I will also say, is made for crap. And I was thinking of another word, but crap was probably the one you say during the day. Just the Oron plush that people have brought me, the bangs are falling off of. All of the honey dolls, the bangs fall off of. On the twins, they have Belsnef, but it's the wrong color. It's like gingerbread Belsnef. And the Belsnef falls apart. It's like it looks like fishing wire that's stitched it together. I'm sure it's some clear wire, but I will say this: have you heard the horror story, the plush horror story? This is now a year old now. It was the Bleach plush that were seized. There were a bunch of Bleach plush. I'm pretty sure it was Bleach. It wasn't Naruto. It was Bleach plush that were seized, and they were sent back to Japan because when a big seize is done by customs, it goes back to the copyright holder and whatnot. And it was decided to do a field destroy. With plush, this most sensible thing to do with the bootleg is just destroy it. It's easy to just destroy it. And how would you do that?
Burn it.
Burn it. Makes sense. Super easy. Burn it. Catch it on fire. It turns into nothing. Every person that was present for the field destroy for these dolls coughed up blood. They're having problems with their vision. And all of these weird respiratory problems. Can anybody guess? Can anybody take a wild guess what the plush were stuffed with?
With asbestos.
Not asbestos. That's the first everybody... Asbestos, no. That would be a lot of anthrax. That would be like enough to take out a city if you could fill a plush with it.
Fiberglass.
It was exactly fiberglass. They were filled with fiberglass. So imagine somebody's baby girl and their Pokemon toy sucking on Jigglypuff's foot, and it's not stuffing, but in fact something like that.
There are other reasons to avoid bootlegs, like health.
Oh yeah, like your own health. So and fiberglass is a really cheap material when you buy it in bulk, like the type of fiberglass you insulate your attic with, but not fluff and not safe for kids to play with. Bootleg plush is one of the things that I see conventions turning their back on in most cases. Most conventions will say, well, we don't know how to detect the difference. I will tell you that's yeah, and it's when the law comes, you can't say, well, I don't know the difference. That's never been an excuse for anybody else. So why can we say, oh, well, you know, my ignorance of this subject is going to get me out of this one. There are some items that you see at conventions that are always 100% of the time bootleg. Can anybody guess what those are? What?
Keyblade necklaces.
Oh, yeah. We'll talk about the Enix story all by itself. There is something that has been, it was very much a staple in anime fandom back in the 80s and early 90s, and I still see them from time to time. Has anybody ever heard the term lammy? A lammy? They're laminate. Crappy laminate posters. They're about.
My sister gets them all the time.
Yes.
And the idol cards.
Yeah, and the idol cards too. The lammies are always bad reproductions taken from art books. They never have any of the telltale signs that we were talking about. Specifically, by fact alone that you can find Totoro and other Miyazaki lammies with no copyright information on it, there is no Studio Ghibli.
Giant letters and number codes.
On the side, in many cases, they're not just the animation, but they've taken covers of manga. I know with the lammies from Chrono Crusade, they're just the covers from the different manga. Another thing that I see, and it's really hard because I say this is always bootleg, but I'm thinking of very specific looking. There were, and this was just recently, like within the last 3 years, encased. They were like silk pillows that were shrink wrapped. They were in these little bags. Specifically, tons of Full Metal Alchemist. Man, there has been a ton of bootleg for Full Metal Alchemist
I
stuff.
just saw those last weekend, and they were FMA, they were Inuyasha, and anything that's been popular, and they're always
and they're double-sided. Yeah, they're flattened, which looks like those space bag things.
Yep.
But the funniest is, if you're a fan of that show, specifically, like the Sayuki pillows crack me up, because one side is Sayuki, like the traditional costumes. The other side are pictures from Sayuki Reload, which you would never, no collector would ever mix those two together. And they usually have, I know specifically with Sayuki and Sayuki Reload, they have different distribution rights. So those pillows, always, always, always bootleg. I used to say if you saw playing cards at a convention, they were always bootleg, but Funimation has started producing actual playing cards. Funimation, I didn't realize the amount of merchandising just on Negima alone. Somebody was in a Borders and they're like, hey, isn't that the show you worked on? And they're like, Negima school supplies, like notebooks, rulers, pencil sharpeners, pencils, gel pens. I was like, oh my gosh, yeah. But the difference between this, well, again, and this. And when you look at these cards specifically, you've had these for a while, haven't you? Because these are before he got the other cases.
Yeah, they've got
these are the classic. Yeah, these are the classic bootleg cards.
This is classic bootleg stuff.
When you look at the artwork, you'll know one thing you'll notice specifically. The change in contrast in the art is pulled from any kind of art book that you can imagine. This looks like it was pulled from an advertisement.
Yeah, CD covers.
Yeah, CD covers.
Anything.
The sad thing is, we know who makes these. We know the person whose family is responsible for making these. And we see them at conventions all the time. The problem is, conventions won't do anything about this. Things that are made illegally in China, I'll talk about this because this is kind of a tough subject. I'll look right at the camera for this. There is a really hard concept when we talk about bootleg enforcement, and that is things that come from China. People say, well, you know, I ordered it and it's from a legitimate company in China. That's a kind of a contradiction in terms on some cases. China is also one of the only countries that never signed the Berne Convention, which is the international document that protects copyright holders and their rights to their works. And you'll hear a lot of us that talk about merchandise refer to gray market goods. Gray market goods are goods that are made in a country that does not have any copyright enforcement, and they are not to be sold outside of that country. And so the minute they leave that country, they become something called a gray market good. A lot of vendors that sell bootleg items will tell you, oh no, this is legitimate, this is the Chinese version. It's a gray market good. And if they were caught by customs officials, boy, they'd have a lot to answer for, because there are real black and white laws about selling things outside of China that are made in those, not protected territories, but made in those specific regions.